Kamala Harris was finally dragged into a sit-down interview by her friends at CNN, and she brought her buddy Tim Walz along because even a simple sit-down interview is a risk to the total destruction of their campaign. This interview should scare every American. This interview proved that Harris and Walz have no idea what they're doing, and they should not be in charge of anything. Not this country, not baking a cake, nothing. Tim Walz is still not coming clean on his claim of carrying weapons of war in war, his DUI, or his IVF claims. Dana asked him, "Do you want to clear the record?" This is his response.
Idea that you said that you were in war. Yeah. Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
Look, I appreciate your service to this country. That's awesome, right? What I don't appreciate and what I don't support is you telling people that you served in war when you did not. And I think we all know that the Trump campaign, they're not harping on this guy because of him serving 20 years in the National Guard or whatever it is. They're harping on this guy because he is saying he served in war when he did not, and he has used that for political gain. So with IVF, he claims his wife used IVF to conceive their two children, right? Well, it turns out that that's totally not true. He did use an in vitro fertilization, but it was a different kind. So it wasn't IVF, and it's like, why would you say IVF when you didn't actually use IVF? It's something stupid to make up, right? Okay, for his DUI, in 1995, he was pulled over for speeding, and he eventually got charged with a DUI. When he ran for Congress, he told people that the night he got pulled over, he failed the field sobriety test because of a hearing problem related to his time in the National Guard. And he told people that the state trooper who pulled him over allowed him that night to drive to jail, which of course is totally not true. And Dana asked him, "Do you want to clear the record on this?" This is his response.
You had to clarify that you had said that you and your wife used IVF, but it turned out you used a different kind of fertility in order to have children. And then when you ran for Congress in 2006, your campaign repeatedly made false statements about a 1995 arrest for drunk and reckless driving. What do you say to voters who aren't sure whether they can take you at your word?
Well, I've been very public. I think they can see my students come out, former folks I've served with, and they vouch for me. I certainly own my mistakes when I make them.
He's very talented at turning himself into the victim. Do you want a victim running this country? I don't. There is just no way this guy can be given power. So on to Harris. According to her, she is proud of Bidenomics. She thinks Bidenomics work. So if you're enjoying this record high inflation, that's what you can expect from another 4 years of Kamala Harris. So when asked what would she do on day one, she didn't give anything specific. She gave a word salad. Take a look.
There are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward. In a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation. And I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So obviously she failed to list any executive orders. This is kind of a tradition. When presidents come in, one of their first things they do is they do a whole bunch of executive orders. If you remember when Trump came in, that's what he did. When Biden came in, that's what he did. I mean, she's got nothing. She's just blaming Trump, who has been out of office for the last 4 years, right? Same old playbook. They got nothing, so they blame Trump. When asked if she would ban fracking by Dana Bash, she said that she's not in favor of it, and she's made her position very clear. Well, the reality is she has been in favor of it before.
And I'm in favor of banning fracking.
So is she just saying she's not in favor of it to get elected? I don't know. Can you take her at her word? Probably not. When asked why she hasn't resolved the border crisis, she blames Trump. She blames the border bill that didn't get passed in the Senate because Trump didn't like the bill, right? So let's talk about that for a second. So the bill being approved in the Senate is not the end of the story. It still would have had to have passed the House of Representatives, and it would have had to have passed the president signing it, and it would have had to have passed not being, blocked by lawsuits by the rest of the country. So it had a long route to actually being approved. It didn't go through just because Trump didn't like it. So keep that in mind. The reality is that Trump resolved the border crisis by executive orders. That's it. When Biden came into office, he could have just left those executive orders as they were, but he didn't. He voted them out. And so Biden created this crisis. Right now, he could make executive orders and secure the border, but he chooses not to. Another key takeaway from this interview, Harris was asked, do you regret telling the American people that Biden was not in mental decline when he was? Her answer is essentially propagating the narrative that Biden is not in mental decline, even though we all know he is. So they're still running that story. They're still on that narrative. Biden is the greatest person ever. He should be on Mount Rushmore. Okay, well, if that's true, then why isn't he running for president? These people have no idea what they're doing. There are a couple of pyramid scheme salesmen trying to get you to buy their BS. Kamala Harris does not care about you. She does not want to solve your problems or the problems of this country. I mean, solving problems, that's hard work. And she's not a fan of hard work. How do we know this? Well, as vice president, she has solved 0 problems. Some may say, well, she's just the vice president. Solving problems isn't her role, isn't her, it's not in her title. Well, you have to have a title to solve problems? Of course not. Friends, we need to show up to the polls. We need to elect Trump, and we need to protect this country from a Harris-Walz administration.